our identity is formed through our relationships, and our fundamental relationship that lasts forever is that, you know, I am a son of the Father forever. You are a daughter of the Father forever. But it's all about our identity is not formed from our job or from what somebody else may or may not think about us. It's through our relationships. And as soon as soon as there's a baby in a womb, there's a new identity formed. You are a mother, you are a father,
Yes.
and that incredible identity that sort of that reflects the image of God. You know, we become co-creators, and so that denial of our identity is a real sort of issue for people across society as well, but especially young people.
Hello, Father Lee. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Isabel. Thanks for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be with you.
Do you want to start by maybe just giving a little bit of an introduction to yourself for people who don't know who you are?
Yeah, so my name's Father Lee Marshall. I'm priest of the Hallam Diocese. For the last 8 years, I've been university chaplain in Sheffield for both universities, University of Sheffield, Sheffield Hallam, and I also run a chaplaincy called St Vincent's Mission Hub for students and young adults. So we have a community of about 100 people, all under the age of 35, which is a great blessing in Sheffield.
Wow, well, I think definitely we'll maybe look at that a little bit later on. But maybe to start with, Father, I know you've been brought up, in a pro-life Christian household. When would you say your first sort of awakening or kind of ownership of the pro-life issue came about?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I've always been pro-life. I guess it's a deposit of the faith. It's part of the faith that we all accept. But the moment in my life when it really sort of came to life really was as a seminarian, and I think I was at the end of my first year in seminary, and we were all sent on a placement in our diocese, and I was in the hospital in Rotherham, just going around the wards with a nun called Sister Joan, and she just bundled me into this side room of one of the wards, and there was a young woman there with a mum, and her husband wasn't there at the time, but I met him later, and she was called Mags Openshaw, and Mags was it was an incredible story. A couple of years earlier she'd lost a child in her womb, and she really struggled with her pregnancies to come to full term, and she was pregnant with twins, and after 18 weeks her waters broke, and she's rushed into hospital, and she basically lied flat in a hospital bed, desperately trying to keep these two babies in her womb, and sadly one of them was born prematurely after 18, 19 weeks, and so she was just laid flat trying to keep this other baby in her womb. She lost the use of her legs.
Oh my goodness.
And the doctors it was dangerous for her. The doctors were encouraging her to be induced so that the placenta from the first child could be taken out of her womb. So she was in a lot of risk personally, but she was so committed to this baby in her womb that she just laid flat. And what the sort of twist in the whole situation, which really sort of stirred something in me, was she was actually on the ward. She wasn't in the natal unit. She was in the ward where the abortions were carried out in the hospital. And so it was the same. They used the same scanners, the same beds, the same equipment. I think it was different staff, but she was surrounded by this situation where all these people were coming in for abortions, and she was desperately trying to to keep her baby alive. And she managed to get to 24 weeks, and they moved her to a different hospital, and she gave birth to the second baby. And both children lived for a very short time. But what the real blessing is, when I spoke to Mags about it, was her and her husband, the family, they really celebrated the lives of these children just for the short time that they had them. And I think in both cases, her husband performed an emergency baptism, but they really just celebrated the life of these babies. And they now, Mags and Andy Openshaw, they now have 6 children, and I see them often. They all come to mass. But once I asked one of the girls, how many brothers and sisters have you got? And straight away she just trotted off, there are 9 of us, 6 on earth and 3 in heaven.
Oh, wow.
And just a beautiful testimony to life. But I think for me, that was the moment when the whole life struggle just became real. It's
when it becomes personal, isn't it? When you connect with it personally,
yeah.
Then suddenly it's more than just an issue. It's reality.
Yeah,
you know?
It wasn't a theoretical issue
Yeah.
anymore. It was real. That these people were fighting to keep their babies alive in the same place where abortions are carried out. And Mags told me later that she had to go for regular scans, and the only scanner was on the abortion unit, and the nurses found it hard to make eye contact with her as she was going
That's
through
interesting,
for the scan.
isn't it?
And
reminds you how abortion can affect the healthcare workers.
exactly, yeah. But it's a beautiful testimony. So that was the moment in my first year in seminary when it really just sort of became real.
And was that what kind of prompted you to get involved in pro-life work? Because I know you did become, quite active in pro-life work. Tell me a bit about that.
Well, I'm going to embarrass you now, Isabel. It was actually you. So we met at a U2000 festival in the summer. We were in the same small group, and then I think we chatted a few times. But then a few weeks or months later, you turned up at the seminary at Oscott. I was a seminarian there to give us a pro-life talk to all the seminarians and the priests, and but also to encourage us to come to 40 Days for Life. And so it was because of you that a group of us, about 6 of us, we used to get in the college minibus and drive down to do the 40 Days for Life in Birmingham. So that was the moment that actually got involved, I guess.
I remember how dedicated the seminarians, well, I was going to say were, but still are. They're still an incredible presence, a couple of times a week coming to pray outside the abortion centre.
Oh, it's great just to go down there and for a couple of hours and just pray the rosary.
How did you find that? I mean, did you find that difficult? Were you nervous beforehand? Tell me a bit about the experience.
It was an experience that after I left, I was always glad that I'd been, and I found it incredibly enriching. But before and in the moment of it, I always found it hard. You pray in a rosary and you're stood there as a presence where a lot of people don't want you to be there, or some people don't want you to be there, and so you're confronting people in a way, or they're confronting you. So, and I guess so it's a lot different praying a rosary outside an abortion clinic than it is in your own chapel. So it was hard. Some people were confrontational, but some people were very supportive as well. But I always felt when I came away that I'm really pleased that I went, and it felt a powerful prayer and an act of witness.
And even sometimes when you faced with those, sometimes it was just passers-by maybe making unpleasant comments, or people, winding down the window of the car as they were driving past to shout something or whatever. When you're faced with those people who might be criticising or condemning you, it can help you to rethink the issue yourself, can't it? And so make sure that you can articulate to yourself why you're doing what you're doing. Sometimes people will recognise maybe that abortion is wrong, but maybe not be able to really have thought it through with clarity. And then sometimes when people are throwing questions or their concerns at you, it does help you to do that as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I found often, especially early on in the moment, I was unable to articulate my belief really. Especially when it got down to sort of really detailed questions. So it would force me to go away and have conversations and have a think about it and think, well, what do I really believe about this, and what is the answer, and what does the church say? So yeah, it forced me to really go away and articulate things.
And also, I know at that time we were starting March for Life in Birmingham.
Yeah.
You came along to that as well, didn't you, Foley?
I did, yeah. I think I came twice, and there were, I think, probably about 100 at the beginning.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was great. It was just a real witness of love, a great sort of celebration. I found it, and we went with the seminarians, and we really enjoyed it.
In fact, I remember one of the very early March for Lifes, you wrote a blog for us.
I did.
And I think you kind of compared the March for Life to, it was some kind of victory parade that you'd witnessed where you came from up around Sheffield way. I don't know if you remember this, because this is going back about over 10 years.
Yeah.
But it was a really beautiful blog, because you were sort of saying how in a way our March for Life is victorious, because we are taking part in that victory from a spiritual sense of life over death, and looking at that spiritually. Could you just kind of maybe just remind us in essence of where you got that inspiration from?
I think it was, I'm trying to remember back to myself, that there was the sense that we were in a battle, and of course the victory is already won. The victory is won by Jesus, and we just have to march victoriously. But the sense of the battle that we were in, it was a case of, well, who are we fighting against? And so often, we can feel like that the people, if people are confronting us, if people are peeping the horns or shouting abuse or shouting things contrary to what we believe, and we can almost feel like they're our enemies. And it was a sense that they're absolutely not our enemies. They're our brothers and sisters. And there's nobody, I think what I was saying in the article was, there's nobody in the abortion industry who is our enemy. There's especially those poor women who've had abortions. They're absolutely not our enemy. And I think what inspired it was Ephesians 6:12, and where St. Paul says, our struggle is not against enemies of flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. So the battle is against the devil and the demons who are whispering and loudly shouting the lies and the confusion that sadly people are believing. So when we join in something like March for Life, it's a spiritual march. It's the victory procession that Christ has won through the cross. But it's essentially spiritual, and we're marching against the demons.
I do think it's so important to remember that, because I know quite often nowadays those who support abortion will be saying, don't bring God into it. It's nothing to do with God. And it's actually quite the opposite, isn't it? We must bring God into it. It is a spiritual battle at its very heart.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's a spiritual battle, so we need to, that verse there from St. Paul, he then goes on to talk about, the armour of God, that famous sort of passage, putting the helmet on and the girdle around your waist and all that. But we need to prepare spiritually for any sort of encounter that we have when when we're marching for life or praying outside an abortion clinic.
And with that work praying outside abortion centres, Father, I know you helped to bring that to your area in Sheffield, didn't you?
Yeah.
So what maybe inspired you to do that, and tell me how that happened?
So so I'd been a priest for a couple of years, and again, I think you probably don't remember, we were having we met up for a drink, and you said, why don't you do this in your own diocese? So I said, well, why not? Let's try it. So you came up and gave a talk to my parish and to many people in the diocese who came along, and it was interesting. That was I mentioned Mag's open show right at the beginning of our conversation. That was the second time I actually met Mag. She came to that talk that you put on, and she came up to me and she said, "Do you remember me?" She said, "I was the one in the hospital." And I said to her, "Mags, like you're the reason that this is happening."
Wow.
And she started crying, and it was a beautiful moment for her as well. So yeah, that was beautiful to bring that full circle. And then Mags came and actually prayed with us in Doncaster. We started in Doncaster, and now it's moved to Sheffield.
And I do remember with that 40 Days for Life that you started, obviously we're primarily and certainly initially thinking of the babies that are going to be aborted, the women that are, and the men that are going to be affected by those decisions.
Yeah.
But when we're engaging in that work, we also can benefit from it ourselves too, can't we? And I know that there was certainly some people up in Sheffield that ended up really being helped spiritually by the work that they engage in. I'm thinking of there was a young man, wasn't there, who stepped forward.
Yeah,
yes, that was it, Albert,
yeah.
and said he'd like to run the campaign.
So our first campaign was so three university students stepped forward at the end of your talk and said they'd like to run it, but their understanding of how they wanted to run it was they wanted to pray themselves for 40 days, 12 hours outside of the clinic themselves. So we said, well, we maybe we need to sort of break it up and just maybe do a couple of hours, but they absolutely committed to going for 40 days, 12 hours a day. Wow. It was amazing, and there were three of them, and they were out all the time. But I've lost contact with the girls, but Albert, through praying the rosary every day, constantly, which I think was his introduction to the rosary as well, he just, over the 40 days, just sensed that there was something more, that God was asking more of him, and he went on to begin discerning his vocation to the priesthood. He's now ordained for a diocese in Spain. So, the fruits can come in many ways. But yeah, his vocation is directly linked to 40 Days for Life.
And it's funny how many similar stories to that I have heard.
Yeah.
So it obviously does really work with the people who are praying. They also reap the spiritual benefits as well.
Exactly. When we're praying the rosary, we or any prayer, we benefit ourselves. We're there praying for others, but whenever we pray, God blesses us as well.
And I know when you were up in Sheffield with this campaign, Father, you ran into a bit of trouble yourself, didn't you?
I did.
With the police, actually. And considering this is going back quite a few years, we see maybe like the first kind of rumblings of the troubles that we're seeing more of now with buffer zones and stuff. Can you just explain what happened there, Father?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I mean, it's 9 or 10 years ago, so I can't remember the exact details. But there was a group of, I think there were 3 or 4 of us. One afternoon, we were just in a group praying the rosary outside the clinic, and the police turned up, and there was some allegation that something may or may not have happened the day before.
Sounds about right. Something vague, yeah.
Which I knew nothing about. I wasn't even there. But the group of us were issued with some antisocial warning, or I don't know what it was, but it was a formal thing. We were issued with a warning for an event that may or may not have happened the day before, that none of us were present at. It was ridiculous.
I think it is interesting, again, that illogic that we see, which is happening right now with, people like, Adam Smith Connor being criminalised for his silent prayer, Livia Tisici Bolt being again criminalised for just offering to have a consensual conversation we can see that that's not anything new, really.
No,
that
it's
right
terrifying.
from years in the past, like you're talking about, we had problems right back then with something like you're describing, you are being targeted for something that happened when you weren't even there, and being issued with a warning, a formal warning from the police for it.
It is ridiculous. I mean, I remember my my reaction to it was, there's no real anger, but I just felt quite bewildered by the unreasonableness of it, the lack of logic, and just the injustice. You know, if that could happen to me, it could happen to anybody, and it does.
Yeah, I think it's true. We've almost come to kind of like just accept it and roll over. Oh yes, well, you know, this is the police again, or this is what the law is again, you know, depending on what the situation is. But when you actually take a step back, you do get quite incredulous, don't you? It's like, you know, me, a law-abiding citizen, being given a warning when I haven't done anything, and it kind of, the truth really sinks in, you know.
It's crazy, and the consequences for not just for the pro-life movement, but for anybody who happens to have a thought or a prayer that's disagreeable to others. It's incredible.
Well, looking at your ministry now, Father, because right at the beginning you were saying that, you know, your ministry, particularly with young adults now, students at university, what sort of issues come up when you're talking to them? You know, tell me a bit about that ministry now.
Oh, it's a wonderful ministry. So my whole day is serving students and young adults, and I absolutely love it. It's really interesting. When I started off, I think the first year, I probably heard maybe 1 or 2 confessions in a year, and now from the students and young adults from the community, they're demanding 3 to 4 hours a week just of confessions. It's beautiful, and the fruit of that is phenomenal. But the challenge, what I find, and this sort of links in directly to the pro-life cause, is the young people I encounter aren't pro themselves. You know, they're not for themselves. And, you know, how can we really be pro-life if we're not pro ourselves? Yeah. And the difficulty is, you know, Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, love your neighbour as yourself. And there are 3 parties in there. There's God, our neighbour, and ourselves. And we need to love all 3. And, you know, how can I really love God the Father if I don't love myself? You know, how can I really love the Creator if I don't honour and love the creature?
And how can I love my preborn child
exactly.
if you're pregnant? If as myself, if you don't love yourself, can you?
If and what I find so often is self-esteem is so low that how can we really sort of love others? So I think my whole the majority of my ministry is just speaking the truth into the lies that young people believe about themselves, the lie that we're worthless, and the truth is that, you know, we are sons and daughters of the Father, and our Father is the King, so that makes us royalty, and we have this great dignity, we have this nobility, and just to try and speak that truth into young people so that they can begin to value themselves, and then they can value others, and then, please God, they can value the baby in the womb. Yeah,
this is just hugely important when we're looking at the pro-life issue. And I know so many times when I'm talking to people, and not even just like the younger ones who are pregnant, it goes through the whole age spectrum when I'm talking to women who are considering abortion.
Absolutely.
That lack of love for themselves, that lack of valuing themselves, and particularly for the younger ones, maybe that lack of identity of themselves. And I think when the abortion is threatening your identity, if you're seeing yourself as, you know, I'm on the path to be a doctor, and maybe that's not going to work out exactly the same if I'm pregnant, or, you know, the only thing that maybe makes me feel valued is my boyfriend, and he's going to walk off if I continue the pregnancy, or the only thing that makes me feel valuable is my job, you know, and that isn't going to be there if I have this baby, then quite often you'll see those women choosing the boyfriend or the job or the study path instead of their child, because that's the only thing that makes them feel worth anything.
Absolutely. You used the word identity there a couple of times, and I think our our identity is formed through our relationships, and our fundamental relationship that lasts forever is that, you know, I am a son of the Father forever. You are a daughter of the Father forever. But it's all about our identity is not formed from our job or from what somebody else may or may not think about us. It's through our relationships. And as soon as there is a baby in a womb, there's a new identity formed. You are a mother, you are a father,
yes.
and that incredible identity that sort of that reflects the image of God. You know, we become co-creators, and so that denial of our identity is a real sort of issue for people across society as well, but especially young people.
Yeah, and you just mentioned then about the image of God, and you know, I always think that kind of Satan wants to destroy God, but obviously being a creature he can't. So instead he will try and destroy human beings made in his image. And you know, clearly you see that very much with abortion. But I think with some of the issues that you're mentioning, maybe that lack of self-worth, particularly I see a lot of girls with a real lack of self-worth, and maybe with men with some of the kind of addictions and things. I know a lot of the young men that I know can really struggle with and things. You know, God trying to kind of spoil how they see other people as well, their image of others, which can be really damaged by certain addictions, like, you know, maybe pornography and, you know, those sort of images, those kind of addictions that are quite common in young people. And so Satan's trying to kind of either destroy the actual image of God through abortion or destroy how we see other people. And I think, again, that kind of ties into what you were saying earlier about the kind of spiritual attack. We really see that spiritual attack on those young people in a very heavy way.
Oh, the pornography pandemic, I guess, is such a huge issue for young men and women, but especially I find for young men, and it's the silent addiction. They cannot talk about it. They can't find that there's so much shame attached to it, that you know, these young men especially, and women, that, you know, they'll be sitting in the chapel thinking that they're the only one, and the reality is they're not, and it's such an addiction. There's a young man who said to me once, a student, he said having the mobile phone in my pocket, it's the equivalent of you saying to somebody who's a smoker, giving them a pack of cigarettes, putting them in a smoking room and saying, don't smoke those cigarettes. And he says, that's me every evening in my room with my mobile phone in my pocket. And he said, it's that bad. And pornography, of course, affects society in so many tragic ways. But it is the unspoken, silent addiction of many young people, especially men. Yeah,
and of course, if men can use women online, then when it comes to real life relationships, we see that again, men using women, and that's why a lot of women at abortion centres will be there, because they're being used by a man and not being supported.
Absolutely,
by a man.
It destroys the image of God. In, you know, we can't see beyond our addiction. We can't see the truth. It blinds us. And I think as another effect that I especially find in people is we're talking about that lack of self-worth and low self-esteem, the shame that is attached to pornography addiction. These young people who are addicted to pornography, absolutely, they can hate themselves because of it. Yeah, it's a real tragedy.
So maybe beginning to tie this all together then, Father, and I think we can see the strong kind of spiritual line that's gone through all of that. For those who maybe kind of are weighed down spiritually in this battle, whether that's through shame of pornography, shame of abortion, shame of other traumas maybe that they've been through, or whether it's just feeling weighed down with discouragement, those who maybe are, leading good pro-life, active lives, but just feel very discouraged at the battle now. Is there anything maybe you can say to reach out to any of those people who are maybe just feeling that weight, that spiritual weight of the battle that they're in?
I'd say, certainly find a community. Find a community of believers, whatever your particular faith is, but just find a community of believers that you can surround yourself with that probably have the same issues as you, but that can really help you. And certainly in the Catholic context, just get back to the sacraments, the sacrament of confession, and something I often say to people struggling with any addictions, but addictions with pornography is you will get discouraged and tired of confessing that sin over and over. God will never get tired of forgiving. God's love is, God's mercy is infinite. So whether you're confessing that sin for the first time or the 1000th time, it's the same with God. So don't be discouraged, especially if you're struggling to break that pattern. Confession really helps break the pattern. But come back to the Eucharist. Fill your eyes with adoration. That can really purify your eyes and your heart. But don't underestimate the power of the sacraments and the real blessing of a community as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Father. And I think you've really hit at the heart of that issue, that purity of heart, which is so needed for all the issues we've discussed today. So thank you so much, and thank you for the ministry that you take part in and that you uphold so well. Thank you, Father.
Thank you for all that you're doing as well.